We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners at Burke Financial Partners.
This is the Finances podcast. This is a short and sharp one. Today we had no topics. How could we have no topics, Ben?
There's always topics. It just depends how long we want to talk for. We could talk all day and just ramble on. But I thought, again, I raised this one and it's probably been touched on and off a few times, but just about the desire of parents or grandparents or friends to help kids and family members to get ahead in life, whether that's be a property or even just helping them out with a lump sum. So again, we deal with that a lot.
Well, we're probably dealing with that more and more as it's become more difficult to actually get ahead in life and get into things like the property market.
I think property is often the trigger, but just getting their feet on the ground in their financial journey. So I think we've been fortunate enough to be involved with lots of parents and grandparents who've set up those little mini investment accounts. We probably refer them as.
Do you know where that began?
Well, probably Peter.
It's Peter. Yeah, 100%. So, where I saw it begin was him doing that for me. I said it on one of the earlier podcasts where he said, "Here's $1,000. I'm going to put $100 a month into it, and at some point you'll take it over. You'll add a contribution to yourself." So, getting into the habit of installment investing.
And that's the thing I would say to clients who we talk about. We might raise it, they might raise it. It's probably 50-50 split. But when you get to that point in time where you decide you might want to transition that wealth over for them to use as a first car, a first home, maybe it goes towards a holiday or something as a
small
business. But sometimes I say, look, at the worst, they might not need it at that point, but they can take over control of it and then they can just get themselves educated. Like they start with an investment account and they can sort of just ride that process and learn, by experience of having it. So a lot of people just never had an investment before. And even if they are open to it, get them involved early with it, like get them on board with, checking the report from when they're in their teenage years onwards. They get to see what the dividend is and an income and, the tax consequences, the growth, and what the market does over that period of time. So they might not be that interested, but within that 5 to 10 year period, they actually learn a lot about markets and investments.
Can I give a quick anecdote?
Go
I'll be
for
quick.
it.
Had a client appointment yesterday. Obviously won't talk names. And I worked out that I'd known this client since she was 13, and she's 33 today, and her parents have been clients. And exactly what you've just spoken about was what her parents did for her, set up a small investment account that she started to get a bit of appreciation for. It was an index investment. Today, she has investment properties, she has direct shares, she has an exposure and an understanding of our market. She does some gearing, so she's borrowed for investment purposes. She's thinking about protection of assets, so there's estate planning and sort of family law considerations there. All of that's been a 20-year process of education, which started with her parents giving her helping her fund getting advice, helping her fund getting a start in investing, and she's now on the road to a very, very fruitful and successful life, both financially and from a lifestyle point of view, all from that inception, that little seed that was started by her parents, which is pretty awesome.
It's just that little bits for a long time concept that we talk about a lot, and they're starting this out when their kids are basically born or very, very young, so they've got a long duration. So they're not compromising their own day-to-day living standards to build this wealth. They're just putting a little bit away regularly. They're not just putting it in a bank account. Like, I think there's a big difference between the two things there as well. Like, we see a lot of clients come in and they've been doing they've got the basic sort of premise right, but they're just parking it in a bank account, which for the last 5 years, sort of give or take, is earned pretty much nothing. So it's actually sort of worth less than what it was at the start because of that. Inflation's running higher than interest rates. So investing it, getting some market movement and some market returns through dividends, interest, coupon payments, whatever it may be, and then reinvesting and building makes a massive difference when you extend that out over potentially a couple of decades. So I think we're big in that, obviously, education space, and I think it's, as much as it's a really good financial uplift, the education of having it is really important. I've got a couple of clients in similar situations. The two sons of one of Peter's probably original clients, and they did their investment account that came across from their mum and dad giving them a little bit of assistance. They pulled money out, they bought a house, but they always continued to keep putting their little bit into that investment account. So they sort of bought small, modest properties that they could afford and fund comfortably. Getting through that now, they probably had them for close to a decade. Now they've got their investment accounts built up again. They're ready to go again. Maybe look at purchasing a second property or upgrading their initial property into something a bit more long-term for them. So they've got flexibility. They've got levers they can pull on because they've got this pool of wealth that they've built over now for them in their late 30s. It's taken them a while to get to that point, but they've lent on it multiple times as well, and it's a great safety blanket.
Yeah, I think that idea of a safety blanket or something, a pool of assets or assets that you can either secure things against or you can draw from, or that generate some supplementary income in times of reduction in income. When you have a family and you need to turn the tap on to an income from or for income purposes from investments, there's so many benefits of actually starting early, growing a pool of funds. What are some of the other ways that we're seeing, or that people who are listening to this could potentially help their family members, their loved ones out? And what other things are you seeing people doing, or for their kids and their grandkids?
I think the biggest one people probably talk about, and we do see, is gifting. Like, still is just gifting raw cash or asset through to the next generation, or sometimes skipping a generation, grandparents do to grandkids. But I think some people are fortunate enough they can do that without impacting themselves. Probably our view always is make sure you don't give away more than you can afford. Like, yes, it's great to help your kids and, that maybe living will concept, but you need to make sure your house is in order first. And if you do give money away, that you're not going to ever need it back, because it's potentially never coming back if it is a pure gift. Now, gifting as well, you're often talking about compromising those funds, because it might be going into your son might have a partner, and you're giving it to your son, but purchasing a property with that partner, that gets grey quickly, because those funds are now basically going half of that through to that other person. If that relationship unravels, then you're probably never ever going to see those funds again, especially if it's a gift and you've got no written contract. So you need to look at the difference between a gift and a loan agreement. And again, we'll get solicitors involved and draw up some basic loan agreements to protect people and make sure everyone knows where they stand on that front. But again, the gifting part, it might form, generally speaking, most of the time it's going to be a part of that deposit that people have maybe struggled to get together initially. They need to get to their 10 or 20 or 15%, whatever the bank or broker is telling them. So it's a bit of a top-up, sugar hit to get them through to that point, to then service that loan themselves. So again, gifting or potentially loaning and then paying it back over an agreed period. They're probably the biggest ones we see in terms of just that lump sum transition. Well, that's what I see anyway. And again, I'm not sure what you feel and see. I think that's still the most common, probably because it's the most simple. People go, oh yeah, we gave our daughter 30 grand, we're going to give our son 30 grand if they can afford to do so when their time is due.
I think a couple of things there. The gifting element is reasonably simple. It's probably the consequences, the second and third order consequences that most people don't think about, and it's probably painful for some people to listen to this and think, I just want to gift my kids some money, but that's what we're here for. Our job is to actually think about that next stage of those funds and what the intended purpose of it is, and also the risk to both parties. The risk that you're giving away more money than you can afford to give away. And I think as clients are getting older too, the other thing which has come up recently is just being very mindful. I know they call it elder abuse nowadays, but being us as advisors, you mention it, we've actually got to have, number one, our clients' best interests at heart. So we'd first look at them and say, okay, have you sorted your own financial affairs out? Can you then afford to gift or support? What level of risk does it put you at? But in simple terms, it's becoming much more expensive to get ahead in life these days, to get a property, and there is a significant amount of wealth, which we spoke about on a previous podcast, in sort of the baby boomers and beyond, how that actually transitions, whether it be through the likes of living wills or gifting, or whether it's left for the estate, they're all really important considerations. But the earlier you can actually involve your kids in maybe not the significant detail of your situation, but getting them involved, getting them educated so that they'll handle that money in an effective way, I think is just so important.
One of the big things I like this concept, and I've had a few clients that have bought into this, is where we've looked at like a matching system. So they've said, okay, we want to help our kids, but we don't just want to give it to them. Like we want them to earn that. Is look at something like they will say, look, we'll help you up to maybe a maximum threshold, but we're only going to help you as much as you save yourself. So if you can save your own 30,000, in this period of time, we'll match it dollar for dollar, or we'll match it 50 cents in the dollar. But incentivizing them to work and save and build their own fundamentals into their own cash flow and savings process, then they'll give them that incentive at the end to do it as well. I think that works really well, where you want to help but you also want to teach lessons, whereas I think we've all seen people that have been gifted large sums of money without sort of any consequence, and then they don't value it as much, and they also can make poor decisions because it sort of just hit their pocket. I think building those life lessons in through that process is really important. If you can get a nice balance of those, that's where it works really, really well.
One of the things you didn't have on your list there, which I know you do, and you've got a number of clients where this is the case, is actually parents supporting their children in terms of getting advice by helping them fund the process of getting advice. So it might not necessarily be about giving them money, it might necessarily be about loaning them money or guaranteeing for a property, but funding their need for advice and paying for the support that they get to get a professional advisor to give them some dedicated and personalised advice, I think can be another really good leg up.
Yeah, I've got multiple of those, and you're probably the same, heaps of them, where the parents sort of have maybe been on that journey with us for a period of time and really value us, but to get their kids to sort of take those first steps, and respectfully, they're coming in pretty raw to what we even do. So they go, look, we'll fund you to get on board and see the guys and work through that initial process and get some advice. Then they start to understand it, get themselves in the right position, know where they stand. Like some of them think they're ready to go with buying a property, they're not even close. Some of them think they're not even close and they're probably ready. So paying for that advice to get some outside input, it's been a big one. And we love dealing with, those family members, because we sort of, you've got to know these people by extension over the years as well. So it's nice to see that connection flow through.
It's also another way, you talked about giving people personal responsibility, not just handing them money that they take no ownership in, giving them a piece of the process and giving them that education. So you're effectively paying for their education to get to the point, maybe in the future, you then say, okay, you're well versed enough, you understand the importance of cash flow and income and assets. Okay, now's the time to help support with a contribution, a gift, a loan, or whatever it might be.
One of the things, I'll just mention this quickly, I think this will be another whole podcast in itself, but is just around the gifting principle. And I've seen where people have come unstuck with it around Centrelink. So that's more so probably likely to be the grandparents gifting to their kids or grandparents gifting to the grandkids. And they're around that sort of aged care or age pension age. There's a lot of rules and regs around what you can and can't gift, how long it'll count against you. You've got to be very careful with that. And I think that's where sometimes people seek advice too late, and it's very, very hard, near impossible sometimes to undo those situations. And they leave themselves compromised where they haven't put themselves first, and they've now got maybe no age pension but no asset, or they've got a heap of aged care costs and no assets and no income to support those costs. Generally speaking, those systems work quite fairly if you haven't done anything drastically, in terms of transition of assets without planning. I think that's where most of the time, if you just do your planning right, those systems work quite fairly. I've had someone where they've written over half of their property value to their kids, thinking they're doing the right thing to transition assets and give them a base of, wealth to leverage off. But they went into aged care quickly after that and were seen to have gifted away, multiple $100,000 of assets because they gifted half of their home away, and then get whacked on the head with costs that they can't afford. So again, that's a one-off example there, but there's lots of examples where you need to be really careful about gifting money. A lot of people fear a tax around it. Tax is, not always, rarely an issue on it. But what does it have as a legacy impact on your situation too?
Yeah, that's definitely another podcast.
Yeah. Tie that through to the next one.
100%. I think that's enough for us today, Ben. I think we'll probably reconvene in the afternoon, and we've got some other topics to cover off on. But for now, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britain FP, or Google Burke Britain Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to, don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britain Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.